Hey everybody, welcome back to the Branch 458 podcast. I'm Casey Ritchie, and I have with me again Rob, Eric Robinson.
Hi.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the implementation MOUs M-2009. If you go on to the NALC.org website, you look on there, it's the contract. Click on it, and it's at the very top of the contract. Whenever you look at the electronic version, it's the first thing you'll see. And then, of course, you can look it up in the MRS if you do it that way. So, the first thing on here, we're just going to dive right into it. So the first thing that it talks about are the changes to Article 8. And I don't really want to read word for word what it says, but I think it's important for us to talk about the changes, especially to the overtime list, because that had a huge overhaul. And that starts at the bottom of page one, and then it goes into a lot of the details on page two. Um, Article 8.5 talks about overtime assignments. And I think this is something that a lot of people are a little bit confused about. So hopefully, after we go through this, there's a little bit less questions about it. And I know a few carriers in my station had questions about it, and I'll bring those up and the answers that I told after we discuss it. So just to read a little bit of it because I think it's important. Article 8, Section 5, overtime assignments. Whenever you look at that, it specifically says, and this is contract language, it says full time letter carriers, including those on limited or light duty, may sign up for either one or both of the following regular overtime desired lists. And then there's two bullet points there. And I'll go ahead and read those and then we'll talk about it. So the first bullet point says employees desiring to work up to 12 hours per day on their regularly scheduled days. Employees signing only this list are not on the overtime desired list on their non scheduled days. However, employees signing both regular overtime desired lists are eligible to work up to 12 hours per day on their regularly scheduled days and their non scheduled days. So that's the first option. The second one, employees desiring to work 8 hours per day on their non scheduled days. Employees signing only this list are not on the overtime desired list on their regularly scheduled days or beyond 8 hours on their non scheduled days. However, employees signing both regular overtime desired lists are eligible to work up to 12 hours per day on their regularly scheduled days and their non scheduled days. All right, so let's break that down. The first one talks about working your regularly scheduled days only,
Yes.
right? I think that one's probably the least confusing out of all of them. That one's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, you can be on the overtime list and you still get to have your day off,
Correct.
is basically what that means.
Your days off.
Yes, your day's off.
So you sign that one, that list only. You're working your regularly scheduled days up to 12 hours only on your regularly scheduled days. So I think that's the least confusing.
Yeah, and the 10-hour language is gone from all this as well. That's something that's noteworthy.
Correct. The second option is working your non scheduled days only, but you're limited to 8 hours for every day of the week. I think that's the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to like that because I know for years I've had people ask me, how come I just can't, I'd be on the overtime list if I could just work my day off. I just want to be done, at 8 and go home all the other days. So somebody somewhere must have heard you all talking about it because that's what that is. So
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because how, and I've talked about it on here before, how the NALC gets its official bargaining position is from resolutions at a national convention.
yes,
So let's just boil that all the way down to the basics. A resolution gets introduced at either like a branch meeting or you go to a state convention. It's introduced to the body of a state association, something like that. It's voted on there, and if approved, it gets sent to national to be included in the book for resolution votes at national convention. If it's approved there, it's now the official bargaining position of the NALC. So I've had several carriers ask me, why is there not an option to sign the work assignment list and the non-scheduled day list? And my answer is, well, simply that wasn't asked to be the official bargaining position by the NALC at a national convention. This is the first time we've ever had two overtime desired lists.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to that. It's just that simple. Um,
Yeah, that's something that if a whole bunch of us really, feel that it's important, we can somebody could take it upon themselves to, you know, bring it up at your branch, pass a motion, and then next time convention comes around, everybody could talk about it and vote on it.
Absolutely. So having said that, uh, the work assignment list has not changed. It is still there. You can still sign up for work assignment. If you sign up for work assignment list, you're working overtime on your assignment on your regularly scheduled days and not on your non-scheduled days. If you don't want to be on the overtime list at all, we call it a no here in Oklahoma City. I don't know if that's common language everywhere else, but you're saying you do not want overtime at all. That is also still there, and that language has not changed. You are essentially just not signing the overtime desired list. Um, the last thing that we haven't talked about is if you sign both of these lists, both options. So there's the regular scheduled day list only, and then there's the non-scheduled day list only. And that language is in both paragraphs there on page 2 of that M-2009, both bullets. At the end, it has that language about signing both lists. If you sign both lists, you're saying that you want to work up to 12 hours, 7 days a week. That's basically what it's saying,
Yeah, yeah, they could work you on a Sunday if they wanted to.
if they wanted to. Now, I've had a lot of carriers ask me about that too. Um, because whenever I've explained this, that's exactly how I've explained it is you're signing up to work every day of the week, 7 days a week. And the first one they always ask, well, they can schedule me on a Sunday. They can do that now, and there's several places in the country that schedule on Sundays, regular carriers that are on the overtime list. So that's an option now. It's just they rarely do it in Oklahoma City.
5 years ago, I worked 27 days in a row in December.
Oh wow.
5 years ago, I was a regular. I wasn't a CCA. Um, so yeah, even as a regular, I've 1 year I worked 3 Sundays in December. So yeah, it's kind of rare in some places. Other places, like I think in Denver, we got a guy that used to be at our station and he transferred up there. And one of the fellas at work is still in touch with them. And I believe he was telling Danny that yeah, it's common for them to work Sundays. So in some places, it's a thing. A lot of other places it's not, but it is important to point that out that you put your name on both of them and they can work you all seven.
Yeah. So if you don't have those overtime sign up sheets out by the time you listen to this episode, you should have them out. They should have went up on the 16th. It's 2 weeks before the beginning of every quarter. Those sign up sheets should be out available for people to sign.
Now I'll say this: the very next part of this MOU, at the bottom of page 2, talking about basically it goes into what we got, how that you can basically, for people who don't volunteer to work past the 12 and 60, whenever they hit their limits. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, and that's actually on page 1 also. Um, so I'll just read that paragraph and then we'll talk about the paragraph on page 2. So Article 8, Section 2, work schedules. It says full-time employees who are not on the overtime desired list or on the work assignment list shall not be required to work beyond 11 and a half hours of work in a day or 60 hours of work in a service week and shall not be subject to disciplinary actions for terminating their tour of duty when these limits on hours of work are reached. So some people have asked why it says 11 and a half, and it's because it specifies that they're work hours. If you work a 12-hour shift, 30 minutes of that is a lunch. So it's not technically work hours. So that's why it says 11 and a half. So that Article 8, Section 2 specifically talks about employees who are not on the overtime desired list or the work assignment list.
Yeah, and then Article 8, Section 5, under, I guess that would be, what would that be? G, point G.
Yes.
And then under that, I guess sub point 1, I'm probably butchering this. But it talks about employees that are on the overtime desired list and that you may be required to work up to 12 hours in a day, 60 hours in a week. And as it keeps on going, the third bullet point, it gets into about how that you may volunteer to exceed 12 hours in a day or 60 hours in a week. And then it says, those who do not volunteer shall not be subject to disciplinary action for terminating their tour of duty when the limits on hours of work in paragraph 2 above are reached. So break that down in English, Casey.
So paragraph 2 above is talking about excluding December, shall be limited to no more than 12 hours of work, 60 hours of work in a service week, unless they volunteer. So it's basically saying that everyone, once you reach those work limits of the 12 hours and the 60 hours in a week, that you have the option of volunteering to work past those limits, or you can say, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to effectively terminate my tour and I just want to go home. Have there been any other questions from your carriers about any of that?
No, I think the biggest question's been about can work assignment people sign the non-scheduled day list.
Yeah.
I've had some questions for management about equitability, and the way I've been explaining it to like my station manager and some of the other members of management at the other stations that I cover is that you have two equitability lists, and it's super simple. You have scheduled day overtime, non-scheduled day overtime. Anybody that's on the list for scheduled day overtime, those people have to be equitable with each other.
Yeah.
Even if one of those people are also on the non scheduled day overtime list, like just working your day off, everybody that's on the list to work your day off has to be equitable. If you're on both lists, I mean, that's great. I signed today to be on both lists. But
Yeah.
the way I told it to my station manager was anybody that's scheduled day only, I'm equitable with them. Anybody that's non scheduled day only, I'm equitable with them. To the best of my understanding, there's not a third, equitability. Like we've always been used to this term, like the big list,
Yeah.
that a lot of people use. I mean, it's still kind of there in a sense, but when it comes to equitability, it's not.
Yeah, and I like to in anything I do, whenever I'm giving advice or posting things on social media or whatever, I always try to go back to the contract language, and it's there on page 2. So I've already read part of it. I'll reread it, but it says full-time letter carriers, including those on limited or light duty, may sign up for either one or both of the following regular overtime desired lists. So that language there tells me that there are only two overtime desired lists. Would you agree with that? Or, I mean, that to me, that's very clear. That's what it says.
I mean, I'm not like a professional grammarian or, an expert and hooked on phonics, but that's what that sounds like to me. There's two.
Okay,
And
so,
there's two bullet points.
so
So I would think if there was a third equitability, it wouldn't say either one or both, and you also wouldn't only have two bullet points.
right, and it might say if there were three, it might say something like one or all, or two or three.
Yeah.
But it's very clear. One or both to me says there's two overtime desired lists. So that's very important for the next thing I'm about to read, which is at the bottom of page 2. So it's Article 8, 5B. And it says, during the quarter, every effort will be made to distribute equitably the opportunities for overtime amongst those employees on the same overtime desired list. So you're right. And that there's people that differ from my opinion, but I go back to what the contract says. It says that there are two lists. And then below that, it says that every effort will be made to make those lists equitable with people on the same list. So you have to have two equitability lists, one for one list and one for the other. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah. So it shouldn't be. I know the people that have leading up to this podcast that have talked to me about it. Some of them have been a little concerned about, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. This is going to be a big headache, for equitability or whatnot. I mean, it might be a little bit of a headache for your supervisor to have to distribute it, in this manner, but I still don't think it'll be a big deal even for them once, we kind of get used to this new way of doing it.
Yeah, and I'm sure there were growing pains in some of the previous contracts where there were big changes to Article 8. So I'm sure there's going to be growing pains here, but to me, the contract language on that is pretty clear, and I'm pretty sure the that National is working on some question and answers to be put out, and hopefully we get those very soon. Um, because something we haven't mentioned is all of these things are in effect July 1. So everything we've talked about so far is in effect July 1, which is coming up very quickly.
Yeah, today's June the 18th for anybody that listens to this in the future.
Yeah.
Well, I guess everybody will be listening to it in the future, but you know what I mean. And you know what? One other thing I want to point out, um, and this is just maybe some people don't know it. Article 8, Section 5, A1, full time letter carriers, including those on limited or light duty, may sign up for either one or both of the following overtime lists. In case anybody doesn't know, if you get injured and you're on limited duty, you have work restrictions, you're on light duty, whether it happened off the job or that'd be light duty. On the job would be limited.
Mhm.
Um, Depending on your restrictions, unless your doctor specifically says you cannot work more than 8 hours, you're able to be on the overtime list. You may just have a restriction where you can't do more than 2 hours of walking splits a day, which is clearly different than doing mounted or doing businesses or casing or whatever it may be. So just kind of throwing that out there too for anybody that does get hurt in one way or the other. If you end up being limited or light duty, as long as it's within your restrictions, hour wise, you could still be on the overtime list.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought that non-scheduled day only list was something that a lot of people that have that 8 hour restriction can definitely take advantage of because you are limited to 8 hours on every single day, including your non-scheduled days. So it could fall within your restrictions as long as you don't have like a weekly cap
Yeah.
of hours. So if you're like 8 and 40, obviously you can't do it. But if you have just an 8 hour per day restriction, you can definitely do the non-scheduled day only list, and be able to work overtime on your non-scheduled days.
Yeah.
So I think we covered that pretty good. If we didn't, if anyone has any questions, you can email them to 458podcast at gmail.com, and we'll try to answer those. So unless you can think of something else, let's move on
Yeah.
to
Let's talk about the new employee experience, retention, and mentoring program.
the
What's the acronym for that, Casey?
the NERP.
NERP.
NERP. I think. I think people had trouble with T-Reap, so they just wanted to like throw something else at us. So they decided on NERP.
That guy's job. Whoever that sucker is that comes up with these
Hey,
goofy.
I got one. For the next route adjustment process, please call it city route adjustment process.
Eh.
Please.
Anyway, so for anybody that doesn't know, the last couple of years they had some tests in different states, different cities, different districts. For there were two different tests for trying to retain new hires and trying to make their experience better, so that our CCAs don't want to quit after a few months, which happens a lot. And here in Oklahoma City, we were one of the places that had one of those tests. And it was a mentoring program. So, for the first 4 months, the new CCA was assigned a mentor, and you're kind of looking out for them, you're helping them, you're trying to help them get through the probation period, but you're also kind of being that big brother, big sister figure for them. It's a full 4 months, and so they took both of them. That one, then the other program had to do with hours restrictions. So they weren't working the CCAs to death during the first 4 months.
Yeah.
Both of those have been kind of brought together in this memorandum of understanding with this new NERP program. And Casey's going to be going to some training here pretty soon on it,
Yeah.
because each one of the options in there is that each district can have a joint team, if you would, one member of management, one member of the union, And I believe, if I remember correctly, kind of part of their duties is kind of overseeing this in the district. Is that?
Yeah, so basically, there's going to be 50 union and 50 management representatives, one for each district, and they will train the trainer. That's pretty much all it is. So, Kansas City, all 100 of those people are going to Kansas City the 26th of June. So, coming up pretty quick. And they will be training us on the NERP program. And should I say NERP program? Because anyway,
Yeah, no,
uh,
no.
on NERP.
It'd be the NER program.
Yeah. So they'll be training us on that, and then we will be going back to our districts and training future mentors, training station management, union officials, branch presidents, stewards, things like that.
Yeah,
So,
and here's the thing. Um, for anybody that ends up listening to this, if you want to be a mentor, all you got to do is contact your local union hall, your branch. You know, get with your steward if you don't know who to call or contact, and let them know that you're interested in this. And basically, what it comes down to is, you get the on the job instructor, for your first 3 days. But for a lot of us, once you get 2, 3 weeks in, there's a lot of things you've forgotten, from those 3 days. It's kind of a crash course. It really should be 3 weeks that you're going with somebody. That's what I'd do if I was running the post office, but they don't listen to me. So you get 3 days, and then after that, you're cut loose on your own. In this new employee experience retention and mentoring program, the CCA is assigned a mentor who will go through training. So any of the mentors will get on the clock training on how to do this. And then kind of what you do is, weekly on the clock, you'll be checking in with them. Hey, what problems are you experiencing? What questions do you have? You're going to be also kind of like an in between, like a mediator between them and management. That way, if management's not real thrilled with their performance, you can kind of get the heads up on it, and you can start talking to the carrier like, "Hey, man, they mentioned you keep missing these scans," and then you can talk to the carrier about what's happening. I know one time, one of the CCAs I was mentoring, it was that same situation where they were having trouble with getting all the packages delivered. And turns out they weren't loading their truck very efficiently. They were just kind of throwing it all in there. Things were getting disorganized. They'd get to the end of the day, and then because they weren't organized real well, there'd be like a small spur that will have fell behind a tub or something. And, they didn't see it till the next day. Well, everybody knows that's a big deal, to have something with a barcode and it get left in your truck
oh yeah.
overnight. And so that's something that could potentially get the CCA on probation fired. Well, if through working with a mentor, if you're kind of showing them the way you do things that are a little bit more efficient, that make things easier for them throughout the day, they end up missing less of those packages and those scans. Um, you know, it takes what it takes, right?
Mhm.
These routes aren't adjusted to the CCAs. But at the same time, if they go have a CCA carrier route, they normally don't want it to take them 16 hours. And that's reasonable. And if day after day, if they're on a route and it's continuing to take them 5, 6 hours longer than what your average Joe would take, management gets upset, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, as the mentor, you get to talk to the carrier kind of about the situation to maybe find out maybe some things that are missing that are causing it to take a little bit longer than what would be normal, quote unquote. And keep in mind when I talk about this, I'm definitely taking my steward hat off. I'm just thinking of it as a mentor, somebody trying to look out for the new hire so that they can get through probation and go on to have a good, happy career. Um, and so, like in my experience, they'd say, hey, they got a whole bunch of stationary events. Well, we hear that all the time, and sometimes we roll our eyes.
Oh yeah.
But for a new hire, maybe those stationary events, quote unquote, are happening at every relay point all day long. And they're taking 10, 12 minutes for like a relay to get their mail ready. Well, then I'd go talk to them. Well, once again, turns out either nobody showed them how to get organized in the morning during the parking lot. This one fellow I'm thinking of, I won't say his name, he'd load, be out the parking lot in like 10 minutes flat. And management's like, oh wow, he's so efficient. This is all going great. But then when he hits the street, He's taking multiple hours longer than what they anticipated after he's already been on this route for several weeks. Well, when I went out with him to see, okay, let's see what's going on, I immediately identified he was just chucking the things in there and then sorting them at the different part points. Now, for any type of seasoned carrier, you're going to know that that's not helpful in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no.
And
Organization helps so much.
well, yeah. And a lot of times it causes these CCAs anxiety because they're so paranoid about not missing a package, about not having a backtrack, about trying to, make the times or whatever. And they're really kind of getting in their own way and they don't even know it.
Yeah.
So, really, I've been a huge fan of this ever since we were testing it in Oklahoma City. And so this program's kind of going, nationwide. Um,
Yeah, and it like Eric said, it blended the mentoring program and the new employee experience and retention program together. We like he said, we had the mentoring program in Oklahoma City, and I was a mentor also, and it worked out great. I think we retained much more CCAs after we did that versus before we had that pilot. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited about it. A little bit about the new employee experience and retention program that was blended with the mentoring program. That's the one that included, getting them supplies their first day on the job. They got a new satchel, not a used satchel, a new satchel. They got a post office hat to wear and a reflective vest. They got a tour of the building, which we did in the mentor program also.
Get any of that. My first satchel I got had about 12 years of leftover lunch crumbs from the
Yeah.
previous fella. You get out there halfway through a split and you get hungry, you can just reach down and definitely find something in there. So I'm glad they're getting new satchels.
Yeah, me too. I'm the same boat. My first day by myself, I asked my supervisor where the satchels were. He looked around at the cases and just grabbed one off of a hook on a case. And he said, "That's yours now." And I learned it's funny because I learned like months later that that carrier just happened to be on his day off, and I took his satchel and didn't even know. But the supervisor gave it to me. So I'm in the same boat. So
So yeah, the moral of the
it,
story is anytime you come to work, if your satchel's missing, you need to go hunt down the CCA that took it.
yeah, it was the supervisor, not the CCA. So yeah, it gets into a lot of these things, and then with this program, it also has very strict work schedules for their first 11 weeks. It tells them how much they can work weeks 1 through 8, how much they can work week 1 through 4, weeks 5 through 8, 9 through 11, and then beyond. So it specifically lays all that stuff out.
And
Uh,
and before you go on past it, weeks 1 through 8, they're restricted to only working in their employing office, not their
yeah.
employing installation, their employing office. So that means for the first 2 months, they're only at their home station. And if you keep reading in there, it says this includes restricting these employees from working in hubs outside of their employing office.
Before we go any further, we are now in the contract language on page 260. We're not reading out of the M 2009
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
So we jumped to that. If anyone wants to look it up, it's on page 260 of the contract. But yeah, it says in their employing office, this includes restricting these employees from working in hubs outside of their employing office. So, like here in Oklahoma City, we have 14 stations, and two of those stations on Sunday are the Amazon hub. So, unless they are employed at one of those two hubs, the way I read this, weeks 1 through 8, those CCAs cannot work in those hubs unless it's their employing office.
Yeah.
Like it specifically says that. So watch out for that. I'm sure management's going to find a way to screw that up.
Yeah, some of them. And here's the other thing I've learned. Um, some members of management just don't know what's in these memorandums. They've had a training over it, from what I understand. Um, but like they sometimes like to tell me, they're just overwhelmed. They have so much reports and emails and things they have to do. If you start to encounter a problem with this, they may not just understand the language. They may not know about weeks 1 through 8. only working inside their own office. So, I know what I've done. I've already talked with my station manager about some of this. I told her this, we agreed that this next week we were going to sit down and have a little meeting, me and her, to go over some of this because I told her me and Casey were going to record an episode and talk about it for everybody. And so you may want, to any stewards listening, it may behoove you to find a little time between now and July 1st just to make sure that you and the member of management are kind of on the same page. As a sign of good faith, approach them, be like, hey, have you had time to read these yet? Do you got any questions? Because you're getting to listen to this awesome podcast and they may not get to hear it. So you might be able to kind of fill them in on some stuff and then potentially avoid a grievance for a CCA down the line, and make their life a little bit better.
Absolutely. I know I printed off this contract language and I gave it to my manager. I discussed it with him for a little bit and I told him the same thing if he wanted to discuss it that we could sit down and have a talk about it. But I wanted him aware of this because of those things I talked about earlier, the satchel, the hat, the reflective vest, dog spray is also in there. It specifies new. It doesn't say used. So they need to kind of get this stuff in advance. They can't just wait until July 1 and then, oh crap, I need to order this stuff because it's on their first day. They get these things. And I don't know if some areas are doing this, but I think it'd be a good idea for them to get that stuff in Carrier Academy because they're all in one place. They can just have a stock of that stuff and give it to them there. So if you guys have any influence in that stuff, maybe suggest that in your areas.
You talked about them getting a new can of dog spray. It reminds me of a funny story. One of the first couple of guys I was mentoring, um, we had it in my station, and we kind of just adopted it as part of our mentoring thing. To where, if after 3-4 weeks, if they were struggling or they were having some, a lot of difficulty, they'd send the CCA out with me for the day on my route, and then they could watch me deliver. I'd have them deliver a split or two and watch them deliver, and then we'd talk about it. And a lot of times, there were 5 different times we did something like that. All 5 of them kept their jobs and made it through probation. But I'm thinking of this one fellow in particular. He caught on pretty quick, and he even told me, he's like, Eric, he's like, I can already see a couple of things you're doing that I'm not doing that are really just making this, difficult out here. And so I was kind of kidding with him throughout the day, and he was asking me like what was inside the dog spray, like what was in it. And I told him, I was like, well, I don't know exactly what's inside it, but I know it's a bad idea to put it on a chili dog. And so we were kind of laughing and everything. And so when we got back that afternoon, Shannon looked at the CCA, looked at me. She's like, Eric, how'd it go? I'm like, oh, it went great. She looked at him. She's like, did you learn anything today? And he was like, yeah, Eric taught me that I shouldn't put the dog spray on a chili dog. And she just looked at me with this mortified look. And I was like, wait, there's more. And I looked at him. I said, why shouldn't we do it? He's like, because it contains petroleum distillate. So anyway, you can have a lot of fun being a mentor. I always tried to make it a good time with the carrier. It seemed like when I had this type of attitude, they would be more open to coming to me for help. There's 2 ways to go about helping someone. One is, hey, Joe, do you have any questions? Everything good? All right, man, bye. Well, if somebody's a little bit more timid or if somebody's not comfortable with you, that's going to be the extent of the conversation. They're going to nod their head, you're going to go on, and they're not going to get any help or any mentoring from you. But if you take a different approach, if you're a little bit more approachable from the CCA, you don't just like, hey, is everything good? Okay, I'll see you later. You're like, hey, tell me about yesterday. Tell me what you're struggling with. Tell me what type of problems you're having. Don't give them just a close-ended question like, hey, everything good? Most people's instinct is to be agreeable. And a lot of times I noticed early on, they'd go, yep, everything's good. And then, 2 weeks later, management's telling me they want to get rid of them during their 90-day. And I'm like, why? They told me everything's good. So that was an early lesson that I picked up on pretty quick. Don't just, and whether you're a mentor or not, take the extra time to talk to our new hires and really, ask them, hey, how's your experience? What are you thinking of this job? You know, what problems are you running into? Are you having difficulty with anyone? or anything. And you'll be surprised. They might open up a little bit more to you. Um,
Yeah, and also the mentors have the ability to sit in on the 30, 60, 80-day reviews with their mentee. So that would also be a good time because you have management telling them, these are the things I need you to work on. These are the things you're unsatisfactory in. And then you can even do it in that meeting, or you could probably do it aside. They might be a little bit more comfortable talking peer to peer with their mentor mentee relationship and just tell them like, hey, I know noticed in your 30-day review they said that you needed to work on reporting to work on time or whatever it is. But just using that as an example, what is causing you to not get to work on time? Is it your traffic? Do you have reliable transportation? Are you just not waking up on time? Can I help you in any way? So it might just a conversation. Hey, set your alarm 5 minutes earlier to get to work. But that's a good opportunity to also point out, those unsatisfactory, that's what it's called in the 30, 60, 80-day reviews, and see if you can help them with those things. So I
and
think,
and I'll tell you this, especially if it's a younger person, maybe they're 19 or 20, maybe this is their first, quote unquote, real job. Some of these things may seem like common sense to you and me,
yeah,
but we don't know what their background is. We don't know where they're coming from. And something as simple as like, well, could you maybe set your alarm 10 minutes earlier? That can make a huge difference for someone that maybe never had a good role model that doesn't understand that. And, it could really help them.
yeah, yeah, or maybe like, hey, you ever thought about getting an actual alarm clock instead of using your phone?
If you guys could see the look I'm giving Casey right now. Do they even
So
sell alarm clocks anymore
they do, they do,
at the old person store?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, this let's see, it's pages 258 through, how far does this go? It goes through 264. So 258 to 264, all about the NERP. I didn't do it that time.
Yep.
Um, so let's just go through this quickly, and I think that we can do an episode on this on its own in very great detail, especially after I go to that training in Kansas City, so that I can get a lot of questions answered that I have. Um, but we've talked about a lot of it, so it combines the mentor program and the new employee experience program. You get the equipment on your first day, new equipment. You get a tour of the office. You're introduced to your station management. You get contact numbers for your station management, an address of where you're going to be reporting to, an EIN. That's all in here. It's all spelled out. It's bullet point. The 30, 60, 80-day reviews, what I just talked about. This one is one of the ones that I think is most beneficial to all carriers, not just new employees. But on page 261, the second bullet down, employees will have access to updated route books and maps prior to delivering a new route assignment. Employees will be provided reasonable time to review the route books and, if desired, converse with another carrier familiar with the assignment. So, having updated uh, route books and maps is should already be happening, but I know it kind of get put off to the wayside. So now it's actually in the contract. It's something that the new employees have access to. So naturally, we all have access to that. We should all have updated route books and maps in our route book. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, if you're looking at your case, you should have a 124 case in front of you. The 124 is the case with the shelf and the drawer. And then just to the right of the drawer, I'm sorry, to the left of the drawer, there's a black binder that goes in a slot. It's right in front of you. You pull that black binder out, and it should have maps. It should have your lunch locations, all those things, and it should be up to date. And now it has to be up to date. So I think that's very beneficial to all employees.
Yeah, and as a mentor, when they're on a new route and they're pulling that out and looking at it, or if they forget to pull out and look at it, go out of your way. Go over there, pull the map out, go make a copy of it. And what I would always do in the past, I would go ahead and mark the park points for them, especially if there's a ton of park and loop, a ton of walk-in splits on there. Just something as simple as that for somebody that's never been on that route, you will make their day.
Yep. To the extent possible, new hired letter carriers will be provided consistent route assignments. So instead of bouncing from route to route to route, to the extent possible, because we know things happen, there's not always open assignments. But if you got like an aux route, or you have someone on vacation, or you have a vacant route in your office, there's several scenarios. They should be, to the extent possible, putting these new hire employees on the same assignments so that they can be familiar and gain confidence on that route. Let's see. New employees are prohibited from performing work outside the letter carrier craft during their first 90 days or 120 calendar days. And then it goes on.
So does that mean after 120 days they're allowed to?
No,
So that's
no,
just
it doesn't.
putting emphasis on it
It
that above all else, no matter what, during those time frames, you do not have a new person do that. Is that kind of the gist of it?
correct. They were just putting emphasis on it.
Because
Go,
I've had that question too. And
yeah. Going on, 262. It talks about the joint retention teams, the JRTs. Um, so after the train the trainers get done, so all 100 of those people going to Kansas City get done training their districts. That's supposed to be done by August 1st. We'll see how that goes. So there's only a month to do all that. After that, there will be JRTs, and the intent, from what I understand, is they will be working not full time, but they will be working on a need to need basis to continue training for new and upcoming mentors in the new NERP.
will educate, assist, and monitor compliance with this program at installations with city letter carriers.
Yep. So it won't be like a full time gig. It'll be something that's done as needed.
Yeah, so if at your station, if you start getting new hires after July 1st, and if you just happen to notice that none of these things are taking place, see something, say something. Reach out to your steward, reach out if the steward doesn't care to your branch, your union hall. That way they can engage the jerk who is assigned to your, yeah, man, another acronym, the JRT from the union side, so they can get with their management counterpart to figure out why this is not going on at your station. Yeah, it
Yeah.
keeps on going. What else we got in here?
It just continues to talk about the mentor program, and we discussed that pretty good because we had that here.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's all in the contract in the national agreement, page 258 all the way through 264. And like I said, we'll do an episode over that alone at a later date, go pretty in depth on it.
Now, the other day, what's today? Today's 18th. So yes, the other day, yesterday. Sometimes Casey gives me a hard time about calling yesterday or the other day. But the other day, the union put out on NALC's website under news and information that USPS announces implementation dates for CCA wage increases and pay table changes in accordance with arbitrator Nolan's March 21st, 2025 interest arbitration award. And I just wanted to cover these three things that were in there in case anybody hadn't heard about it. I know we shared it on, Casey shared it on the branch Facebook page, but the CCA pay increase, they in the contract, they had 180 days to where all the CCAs were going to get a 50-cent bump. That took effect June the 14th. So it was pay period 14 of 2025. All CCA's pay rate goes up 50 cents per hour. So that took effect a few days ago. The second part on there was also effective June 14th. All city carriers currently in Step P in Tables 1 and Table 2 will receive a one time pay increase to an amount that is equal to a flat dollar amount of $1,000. If you're a carrier tech at Step P, it's $1,021. Now, not to be confused, they're not cutting you a check for a grand. It's just your hourly rate's going to go up roughly 47, 48 cents an hour, if I remember my math from several months ago. And so that has already taken effect as well as of 4 days ago. Let's see here. The Postal Service expects the elimination of Table 2 Steps A and AA to be effective July 12th, 2025. So, in a little under a month from now, anybody that's on A, you're going to get bumped up to Step B.
Yep.
And if you're a PTF on AA, that will be eliminated and you will jump up to the appropriate step on that PTF table, which is also B.
Yep. And once you start on B, that you restart your 46 week until you go to the next step.
Correct. And then the last update that was on here, USPS indicates that back pay calculations are ongoing and expects payment in August of 2025. The retroactive pay will include the November 18th, 2023 and November 16th, 2024 general wage increases, plus the 1% additional increases for CCAs on those dates, and the first four COLAs for career carriers.
Heck yeah, good information.
Yeah, so that's some of the latest updates they put out there. I know a lot of people have been wondering when their back pay is going to show up. I've been trying to forget about it altogether. That way, one day I'll open my check and it'll be a huge surprise. But yeah, August is when we can look at that.
Awesome. What else you got? Got any other
Downtime.
hot topics?
Casey, you have downtime. I need you to carry an extra split, and I need you to
Oh,
be back in 8. Can you
okay.
get to that for me? Thank you.
Well, okay, so downtime. Let's talk
Well,
about
I've been
downtime.
hearing a lot of people talk about it lately because it's summertime, and
Yeah.
typically volumes do kind of go down. And so I've had a lot of carriers complaining that at their different stations, some members of management are being very aggressive with downtime and with their downtime expectations.
Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind when anyone says downtime, especially in the summer months, because of working with route adjustments and stuff like that, is June, July, August are exclusion periods, and the reason for that, let's just explain that. So exclusion period meaning they cannot use June, July, or August data on your route to adjust your route. They can't use those 3 months in your 8 week analysis whenever they're doing a route count and inspection. That's all part of Chapter 2 of the M-39, Chapter 9 of the M-41. So that's what I mean by exclusion period. And the reason for that is because mail volume goes down in the summertime. So I think it's only natural that we would have downtime sometimes. I think management embellishes that downtime a lot. They kind of inflate that downtime and they want us to run. And I would encourage everyone to not do that.
Well, and the
Um,
other thing that sometimes with their fictitious made up downtime figures is, it could be 115 degrees outside with the heat
yeah,
index. And, what type of impact is that going to have on your day?
yeah,
It a lot of times it causes me to go past 8 because I am
yeah.
stopping more frequently, normally starting around 10:30 in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning. Every split, I'm stopping and dumping water on myself or getting my cooling towel out and swapping them out. You're going to be going to 7-Eleven a little bit more often, to go inside and use the bathroom because all the water and electrolytes that you're going to be, consuming while you're out there, or Brondo if you're one of those people. And so,
Yeah, and just going to the bathroom and splashing water in your face or your neck, rinsing off a little bit, like it's refreshing, cools you off. So, uh, yeah, you definitely want to take care of yourself in the summertime. So that is probably going to eat up some of that downtime that management's trying to push on you. So if you have downtime, if you believe you have downtime, then be honest about it and take the downtime. But if you're in a situation where they're being aggressive with you and you legitimately don't feel like you have downtime, I would put it on a 96. Whenever they're saying, hey, I need you to take this 45 minutes for your downtime, and after you've already verbally told them, I don't feel like I have downtime, and they're instructing you to take it anyway, that's what we have 96s for. I'd grab a 96, I would fill it out. I would put on there in the reason in box J, uh, supervisor blank is telling me I need to take this and I don't feel like I have that time. And then you put your estimate in there. How much are you going to go over? If you're going over by the 45 minutes they told you, put that in there. If you're going over by 30 minutes because you can take 15 minutes of it, put that in there. But I would stand your ground on that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely don't be bullied at it. And depending on the station you're at, you may be able to just have a conversation with your supervisor and
Hmm.
let them know, hey, you know what? I understand that's your estimate. I was kind of looking at my volume today. Here's my estimate. This whole downtime game, the whole pivot tool that they're implementing, that doesn't change our reporting requirements.
Nope.
If I feel like I'm going to be needing overtime to complete all the mail that I'm being given, I have an obligation to let management know that. And if I just take the downtime from them, if I go out there to the street, deliver my route, go carry the extra on the other route, go into overtime, and then come back, 30 minutes after 8 or however long it takes me, there's kind of a problem with that. Because number one, you're putting yourself in a position to be accused of unauthorized overtime, which, I mean, I get it. To me, that, part of me is like, that's completely ridiculous. It takes what it takes.
Yeah.
But we have to give management the opportunity to manage. That's their right. Article 3. So if you feel like you're not going to be able to make 8, ask them, what do you want me to do with the mail then if I can't make 8 according to your estimate? Because here's my estimate. And especially if you're on a route that has apartments and if you haven't done maintenance for a while, lower volume days is what this is made for. Like you got an
Yeah.
extra 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it may be. Use that time to do some of your maintenance. Excuse me, and tell management that you need that time. And I've heard in the past where they're like, well, you should be doing that every day. Okay, boss, you don't want me doing that every single day like that. I mean, I reserve it for days where it's a little bit lower and I really thoroughly go through. I get the new rent roll, and I do what I'm supposed to do and I maintain it. But when there's a lower volume day, most of the time it soaks up a lot of that downtime.
Yeah.
And one other thing, courage is contagious. So if you're at a station where this is being spread to a lot of the carriers and multiple people are just shutting their mouth and just taking it and going out there and doing it, you know what? Speak up. Like if you feel like that's inappropriate, that their projection of downtime is wildly inaccurate, say something to them. And if another coworker sees you standing for your rights and standing your ground, it's contagious. It may encourage them also, because what I don't want happening is people feeling like they have to skip a break, skip their lunch, skip their comfort stops, which I don't even want to get into that, but how they're taking their comfort stop if they're skipping it. But you can read between the lines. Um, but that's what happens. We know that's what happens, Casey.
Yeah.
There's people that are a little bit more timid in their personality, and that's fine. We're all different. Um, but what's not fine is a supervisor or manager using DOS and taking advantage of somebody's more softer personality where they don't want to say something back. So, if the carrier to their left and the carrier to their right, if they hear them giving management their estimate and, asking for a 96 if it's appropriate, it may spill over to them and they may feel a little bit more emboldened to not be skipping these things in the heat and stuff. There is no
Yeah.
going faster to beat the heat.
No.
I had to get
No.
that in there because I've heard that's been on scanners before.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous. So they're sending out those scanner messages, and it's coming from national and or regional or your district office or wherever they're coming from to take rest stops whenever necessary to beat the heat. And I would take those things seriously. There's people that are getting seriously injured because they're trying to hurry to meet projections or to do this downtime or whatever the case is. They got a supervisor or manager riding their back or whatever. Just don't do it because it's important. You have to go home at the end of the day. And once you have a heat episode, whether it's heat exhaustion or heat stroke, and let me pause there. Ask yourself honestly, do you know the symptoms of either of both of those things? If you don't, and you're being honest with yourself, then look it up so you do know because it's that important. We're out there in the heat every single day during the summertime, sometimes beyond that in the hotter parts of the country. And it's serious. You need to know the signs of those things. Um, But once you have one of those episodes, your body is never the same. You're more susceptible to it, and you, uh, hopefully you don't get to the point where you can't work outside anymore. Because I know I love carrying mail. I really do. I like being out there. I like talking to my customers. I like providing that service. And if I had a heat episode, I wouldn't be able to do that probably. Um, so take care of yourself.
Yeah, and make sure your newer carriers, not just CCAs, but make sure some of the people that haven't maybe been here as long as you understand that when these scanner messages say use approved brakes to cool off from the heat, well, there's some language that I'm familiar with, Casey. Reasonable comfort stops will not be denied.
Yeah.
Okay. That means comfort stops are approved breaks in my book. It's
Yeah.
in the language that reasonable comfort stops will not be denied. And if it's 100 and whatever outside, if it's 90 outside and you got to stop and go cool off somewhere, that's completely reasonable to 99.9% of people that would think about the topic.
Yeah.
And I just don't want new people thinking they can only use their 10-minute breaks and lunch to cool off because that is happening. There are people that think it. And so just take these new people under your wing, even if you're not a steward, even if you normally don't, speak up or do a lot of stuff at your station. Make sure they know, hey, man, when this says that on there, comfort stops are a thing and they're approved.
Yeah.
It's in our language.
Yeah. So I guess the last thing I'll say about downtime is that is supposed to be assigned in the PM, and that's in the M39. That's part of management's responsibilities. So I know they're going around in the mornings and they're trying to push this on people because they're inherently lazy. They want to get that mail out and they want to get it assigned as quickly as possible, and they're going to do it in the morning. And if they can convince 10 carriers in their office to take downtime, then they won. But don't put yourself at risk. Don't hurry when you don't have to, especially in the summer months. Um, and tell them, I don't think that I need that. I don't think that I can do that. If they push it on you, then we have to follow instructions. Fill out a 96. The 96 is not for management. The 96 is for us. It's a receipt that we told management we needed help. That's exactly what it is. And you can get a copy of it if you request it.
If they deny you having one, notify your steward. That's our form, not theirs. It's a grievance.
Yeah, if you request one and they deny you one, that's agreements. If you request a copy of the completed 96 and they refuse, that is also agreements. It's all in the same paragraph in the
Now,
39.
and I'll say this: if they just arbitrarily deny it, like just instantly denied, feel free and ask them. Say, what are you basing that on? Well, the numbers. Okay, I got you. Where are those coming from?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's your volumes. Okay, I understand, but where are you getting that from? Have them say that they're getting it from DOIS, and then on your break or lunch, write a statement, give it to your steward, and let them know that your supervisor denied your 99 because strictly off of DOIS telling them you didn't need that time. They're not supposed to do it. It's not supposed to be the sole determinant of a carrier's leave time, return time, or anything in between.
Yep.
It's an estimate, and sometimes, guess what? Sometimes it comes close. It does. I've seen it.
Yep.
Sometimes it doesn't. And then there's a lot of sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, yeah, I'm great.
So we covered a lot. Like I said, I want to do an episode on the NERP in detail. I'm having trouble not saying NERP program, but that P in NERP means program. So I don't want to say it twice.
It's like people calling it the ATM machine.
Right?
Hey, I'll tell you what, in closing, I had a thought because we're coming up on an hour here. And talking with Casey for an hour can be challenging. So I want to wrap this up. Um, the thought of unionism, the thought of people getting involved, everything we've talked about today to people, because most of the people listen to this are not a union steward, they're not a branch officer, they're none of those things. Um, in a lot of places, there's a lack of involvement. There's a lack of stewards. I know at our branch, when we come to the monthly meetings, a lot of times it's the same people that always come. Branch 458, our members can attend via Zoom. Jump on that Zoom occasionally to see what we're talking about, to see what's being voted on. That way, your voice can be part of this as well. And if at your station if you start to see that maybe the mentoring program isn't being followed, or you don't really hear much about it after July 1st when you get new hires. Maybe you should be the person that should contact your branch and say, hey, I'd like to be involved in a way. What can I do to help? I mean, Casey, do you know how thrilled Ken would be if he got 10 or 15 phone calls this month of carriers saying, hey, man, you know what? How can I help? Is there anything you guys need? Is there a way I can get involved? What can I do?
Yeah, we need it.
Yeah,
Come on.
yeah, and you'll get a lot of satisfaction from it. The camaraderie that I get over the last 5 years since I've been getting involved in stuff is invaluable to me. It's brought me a lot closer to a lot of my coworkers at work, and I view them in a different light. It's caused me to care about them more. Where before, that wouldn't have been part of my verbiage.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
don't know. It
I
just
know getting involved with the union here in Oklahoma City has opened up a lot of doors for me. It's done a lot. I'm able to help a lot of people. I never thought that whenever I got hired, I would be doing a podcast in 2025 just to educate people.
you
Like
know,
I never thought that, and I enjoy doing it. So if anyone has any suggestions on episodes, I know we drummed up a few just in this one that we're going to do later on. Um, but yeah, email that over branch458 podcast at gmail.com.
Hey, yeah, and that's a great way to get involved. If you don't have time to go to meetings, if you don't have the desire to be a union steward, or maybe you don't feel like you have the ability to, but you're listening to this podcast, maybe next time you guys take a break, tell your coworkers about the podcast, and then ask them, say, hey, I'm going to shoot Casey an email with some suggestions. What are some things you'd like talked about? What are some topics that you'd like to hear about? And maybe you could be that kind of point of contact for your station with the podcast. I mean, I guarantee you, Casey will be thrilled if in a couple of weeks he gets a couple emails from people with some ideas or things they want to hear about. So that could be a huge way for you to get involved and help out your fellow brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. So if you want to be a mentor, tell your branch president, I want to be a mentor. If you want to get involved being a steward, tell your branch president, I want to be a steward. Overtime lists, sign up sheets are out. There are two lists, three options. We talked about all that. Um, that's it, right?
Yep, just and don't forget, don't put the dog spray on chili dogs because it contains.
Petroleum distillate.
Yep, there we go. All right, y'all, take care.
Have a good one.